Welcome to Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. Join the podcast mogul Phil Better as he interviews successful entrepreneurs that make their living in the digital world. Now, let's join your host, Phil Better, and his special guest today on Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast.
Welcome back to another riveting episode of Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. I am, of course, your host with the most, Phil Better, and today I am very excited about our guests because they are transforming the landscape of management and leadership in this digital age. They are not only the visionary co-founder and CEO of OnLoop. Since 2021, he has been at the helm of OnLoop, a generative AI company with a mission to convert every manager in the world into a great manager. Through their innovative collaborative team development, CTD, approach and platform, OnLoop is revolutionizing how the world's top creative agencies and technology companies approach management and leadership, which we all know is very important. He's on a journey to organizational effectiveness, beginning with the significant roles at Uber and throughout his MBA at Stanford. His passion for driving business outcomes through effective management is evident in the success and impact of OnLoop. A proud naturalized Singaporean and an SMAU scholar, our guest has been recognized at the World Economic Forum Technology Pioneer in 2022. So that's huge. So let's get ready to learn about the change that he's bringing into the management and leadership world. Please welcome our guest, JJ. JJ, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for having me.
Okay, I'm going to just jump right into it. What made you decide to become an entrepreneur? What made you just decide, hey, I'm going to go into the crazy world and the ever stable world of entrepreneurship?
Well, I call myself an accidental entrepreneur. I don't think growing up, anything in my childhood sort of suggests entrepreneurship. And I grew up in a salaried household, and I was taught that getting a job and being a salaried professional is the way you build a career. I think the wheels first started turning when I decided to leave management consulting at Accenture and go to Stanford Business School. And the Stanford MBA program is a little bit unique, whereby the focus is a lot on you as a person. And why people should follow you, which becomes obviously very important in any sort of entrepreneurial venture, because you typically have to hire a team. You probably have to inspire customers to buy your product. You have to sort of inspire people to invest in you. And so you end up building a movement in some shape or form. And if you think about digital entrepreneurship today, it is largely a movement, right? So obviously the creator economy and sort of people gaining followership becomes a big part of it. But I didn't actually feel financially comfortable to do it until I left my job at Uber after we IPO'd, and my net worth was in the 6 digits, which let me sort of say, okay, I can afford to not have a job for a year and a half, and sort of give this a shot. And so what sort of eventually led me taking the plunge is really believing in what we do, and really believing that sort of helping knowledge workers achieve their full potential at work is probably one of the most meaningful things that people can do, given that so much of our awake time is spent at work. And I felt throughout my career that the approaches that I witnessed in how teams were managed and how teams were assessed and developed were just frankly subpar. And I felt that we could do it better, and sort of rethink how organizations are managed, which is what we focus on at OnLoop.
So was OnLoop, did the idea for OnLoop, did that come from having bad managers in your career as a salaried employee, and you're like, I have to change this? After you went to Stanford Business School, you probably said, oh, this is how managers have to be, like they're supposed to inspire, not create fear. Was OnLoop the idea, or the
Yeah, so not directly. I think I saw the impact that bad managers had. And I've had times in my career where I've had bad direct managers but that was probably not their fault because I'm fairly hard to manage. And typically I always had someone who was my manager's manager or further higher up in the organization, sort of provide air cover to let me do the things I wanted to do. But it was more from the fact that when I led organizations and at Uber, I had the privilege of running both regional and global teams. I felt that processes that we had to go through, and the tools that we were given didn't really inspire better work. It inspired politics. It inspired people playing visibility games, which sort of led me to coining this term that I call eloquence bias, which is whoever sounds better is considered better. And in a global workforce, and no offense to you, that usually ends up being the straight, white, extroverted male. And a lot of sort of DEI issues, etc., that we talk a lot about ultimately boil down to the fact that certain groups of people advocate for themselves and their teams more than others. And frankly, calibrations and promotions becomes about who's loudest voice in the room versus really sort of measuring work and rewarding good work. And so it was more sort of my observations, both at my time in management consulting as well as in tech, that sort of felt like there was an injustice that was taking place. And the problem could be very well solved by better approaches and better technology, which is what led to the birth of OnLoop.
I like that. And with OnLoop, were you already working with AI previously to doing this, or was it just like, hey, AI blew up, in 2020 or 2022 pretty much, and you're like, well, I can use this to make things much better?
Yeah, so we were a Gen AI company before Gen AI became a term, and so we actually started working in a private beta with GPT-3 back in early 2021. So GPT-3 had come out in August 2020, and all my friends in Silicon Valley were raving about the tech. And actually, before we had raised any capital, I had applied for OpenAI's private beta and got rejected. And I reapplied after we had raised capital and we got in. And in February of 2021, we decided to bet our entire product roadmap on the technology. And so the first use case we started tackling was automating performance reviews, which is a highly painful exercise people go through. And people largely feel is a waste of time because you're sitting and making up stuff from memory. But if we took sort of micro feedback through the course of the quarter or 6 months and then stitched it together with generative AI, that was a much better way of actually summarizing someone's performance. And so we were the first company in the world to announce automated performance reviews in mid of 2021. And actually, until ChatGPT came out in November 2022, everybody was like, oh, can you trust this AI, blah, blah, blah. And then people just changed their minds as soon as ChatGPT came out. And so people's concerns about AI in the workplace just evaporated almost overnight. Whereas we had been at it for a year and a half or two. We skipped the blockchain crypto wave and we're able to sort of pick the right technological trend. But the reality is that it's less about the tech, it's more around sort of unsolved problems in the workplace. And we deal with topics like goals and feedback, which people have really struggled with sort of pre-AI approaches like performance management or OKR management that became these clunky exercises that took months and everybody felt like this was an utter waste of time. And now with AI, we can take people's unstructured observations, take morsels of dots, and then connect them to sort of help people structure feedback, extract insights around skills, even break down goals, figure out how they cascade through organizations. And so we can take a lot of the manual paperwork out. And obviously, as the technology's gotten more mainstream, we've obviously applied it in many different parts of the product. And we were just lucky. We were just lucky that we were able to identified that this technology allows us to solve unsolved problems in a new way. And I think which is why applied AI is just so interesting. There's a lot of attention, obviously, at the base layer of infrastructure and hardware, where companies like NVIDIA and OpenAI today are getting a lot of the attention and the spoils. But really, this is the next wave of the internet. And if the internet's taught us anything, is that applications end up being the most important companies of the stack. And so, people are more and more using the term applied AI, which a lot of people diss off as a wrapper on top of the large language model, but really are building workflows. And as much as people use ChatGPT, I think it's still going to take a lot for the world to figure out how to do the correct prompt engineering for every use case. And businesses will get built, sort of building the right workflows on top of large language models to sort of solve exact workflows that people need without needing people to write prompts.
I like that. Yeah. Right now, prompt engineering is huge. You can find at least a dozen YouTube channels just on talking about prompt engineering and where it's going.
More than a dozen.
Oh, yeah. I know there's probably like dozens of channels talking about prompt engineering and how people are asking for. I've seen some job listings for prompt engineers now. Yeah. And it's so bizarre because you can literally ask ChatGPT how to become a prompt engineer. Yeah, like I literally have a prompt. I use ChatGPT because it's a free tool, but I literally have one of my threads as prompt engineering. I'm like, this is what I need. How do I make a prompt that works it? And it's kind of like really, I'm like, are businesses that dumb? Like they don't know that the tool will actually do it for you, and then it will just continually get it better because that's what its job is. What I'm interested with using OpenAI and using a generative AI for this. Have you seen? I don't want to say issues or negative situations arise from people using OnLoop to create these, all the unnecessary workload that managers have to deal with on top of, just the regular politics. Have you found like some companies are pushing back against it because they don't feel that there's like, because AI has mistakes happen. Do you feel that some people or some companies have pushed back on that because of the errors that can be created by AI?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things. One is so actually, funny story from 2022. We had a time when the models would spit out really inappropriate summaries. So it was a woman who was talking about sort of feeling isolated at work, and it sort of spit a summary and made up a story about how she was single because she wasn't going on enough dates, and that she really should be dating more people. And so
something I don't know work would be relatively
right. And so if you're using large language models, as a company, I think two things are very important. A is ensuring there's a human in the loop in the right places, and that can be sort of internal to us as an organization, and we actually sort of review things the right way, both through machines as well as sometimes through humans, to make sure the output is relevant and correct. But the models itself have also got a lot better at putting the right checks and balances in place. And the thing is that because the tech is changing so quickly, people might have a bad experience and they get stuck at that bad experience. The reality is that in a matter of weeks or months, that's actually been solved as a problem. And we generally work with at the very top of knowledge work. So we're working with VC or PE-backed tech companies or sort of pretty elite creative and ad agencies. And so at that top sphere of knowledge work, I think there's very strong embracement that this technology is here, and that if you're not going to use it, you get left behind, right? So I think at an organizational level, we're just seeing a very sort of deep interest in investing in AI in the right places for driving productivity. I think sometimes you have pockets of fear in organizations where when something goes through AI, they're not sure what happens, right? So they're concerned on where that's going and sitting at, does it being sent to somebody? And so in our product, we are very thoughtful around the right education and even how we name certain things to make sure that you increase trust. And I think every product builder needs to sort of do the right things to increase that trust between the product and the user, especially around AI products. But you know, I wasn't old enough when the internet came out to remember whether there was hesitation. I'm sure there was, right? And I'm sure there was fear. And so those are natural with any sort of new technology. But I think what ChatGPT was able to do is get the product into the hands of 100 million plus people within days or weeks. And it's the fastest that any major technological tool has become mainstream that quickly. And therefore, people's sort of awareness as well as adoption of it is significantly higher than anything else that we've seen in history. And so 75% of knowledge workers surveyed have already used applied AI in some shape or form at work. And that number is only going to go up. And so I think there are broader sort of fear mongers around AI, around the societal implications. But when it comes to AI at work, I think it's pretty well accepted that it's here to stay, and that if you're not going to adopt it, the loser will be you, not someone else, not the company, not AI.
I'm curious because you brought up crypto and blockchain earlier. Do you find, because people got burnt obviously by the crypto and are still getting burnt by crypto and blockchain, which I still find very interesting, even though we had a very good period of time where people learned. Do you see those two integrating, blockchain and AI integrating in the future to become even more powerful?
No, absolutely. And I think there are already sort of applications and use cases where that exists, right? So there's a term called DePIN, which is decentralized physical infrastructure network, right? Whereby the belief is if your physical infrastructure that is running the AI is decentralized and on blockchain, it is potentially more secure. It is potentially more efficient. It's potentially more de-risked against sort of outages and things like that, because people can sort of take over loads from other nodes in the system. And so we're definitely going to see blockchain getting used sort of for the right reasons with AI. I think the problem with crypto is that it was very easy to become a gambler with crypto. And as a result, it attracted gamblers. And so despite the fact that it was largely a computing movement, and it's still a computing movement, the gambling side of it meant that the overwhelming majority of actors in the space were traders and gamblers and not computing folks. And as a result, the good of the technology sort of got outshone by the bad of sort of the ecosystem actors. I think that's very different with AI, whereby the people building, operating, using are largely not gamblers but technologists. And as it is from a use case perspective, it's much more pervasive, sort of in society, and therefore I think it is sort of not smart to actually equate the two in any way, and think about the hype cycle of crypto and the hype cycle of AI in a similar manner. I think the other piece is sort of differentiating between Bitcoin and everything else. And Bitcoin really is where it is today from a value perspective, is because people see it as an alternative store of value that is not manipulated by sort of federal agencies of countries with regards to currency manipulation. And so it has a very different use case versus the rest of crypto, and is very much sort of a gold alternative and a fiat currency alternative as a store of value. And so, but unfortunately, often because of sensational media, everything gets clubbed as one, and so people start looking at crypto as a holistic piece. People start looking at AI as a predictive piece. Now, there's a huge difference between predictive AI and generative AI. Actually, predictive AI is 25-year-old technology. Meta has been thinking about what shows up in your Instagram feed with AI for a very long time. But it's predictive AI versus generative AI, and ChatGPT is generative AI. But obviously now everybody talks about AI as this one thing. And so I think that there is nuance to everything. And I think what becomes important is to break it down to its constituent parts so you can think about it from a first principles level, versus thinking about it as a holistic blob that's a black box.
I like that, and it's a great thing because, like you said, there is multiple smaller niches, if we will, inside AI, quote unquote. There's smaller rooms. You have, like you said, the generative, and then you have the other one, and then we have true artificial intelligence, which we're still trying to work towards. Do you see, because you're in this space, and I'm far from it, I'm just looking through the window of this AI world. Do you see us coming closer to a true, quote unquote, AI, nearly sentient, if you will, computer that will maybe change the world? Or do you see that as something that's going to be blocked because of the fear mongers that's been happening when it comes to just generative AI?
Yeah. So the reality is that we're already there, right? So there's a company called Candy.ai that I learned about recently that does AI girlfriends and boyfriends. And revenue for that company is off the charts. Off the charts. And so we are going to share the workspace with humanoids. We will have AI friends. And I think that's good for the world. And if you think about sort of loneliness or the lack of social fitness that people have today, especially the young generation, that is probably one of the biggest diseases that's not treated in a hospital. And so I think we have to ask ourselves, what is deeply human? And the sad answer is not a whole lot. And it is a sense of purpose. It is a sense of having feelings, and it's a sense of sort of irrational emotional connection. That's about it. Anything cognitively is not purely human. And machines are already better at doing a lot of jobs that humans used to do. We used to make everything by hand. We don't anymore. They're made in factories by machines, right? In our generation, the work of coordination or project management or alignment or all of those things that happen in organizations done by humans are not going to be better at it than AI in a few years' time. So this is just a continuation of a movement whereby machines have been taking over human jobs for a very long time, and they will continue to do so. And therefore, it becomes very important then to define what is deeply human. And I believe there are sort of three skills that are quite human that I think will remain elevated above technology. So one, I think we are tribal and social as people, and people generally like hanging out with other people. So partnerships between two CEOs will likely be done by two human CEOs. And so if you're in a relationship building industry and you're good at it, if you suck at it, you're probably not okay. But if you're good at it, you're probably okay. Two, I think the human brain can connect disparate dots in unexplainable ways that can lead to unique insight. And that also, I think, will remain sort of the purview of humans for a long time. I think machines will be able to connect dots in predictable ways, but it'll be harder to do it in ways that are unpredictable. And then three, because of the way society is structured, we will always need humans to make tough decisions or judgment calls because we need to hold someone accountable. And we can't put an AI in jail or have them resign or fire them. And so if you're in a decision-making role where you have to make nuanced judgment and build relationships with others, your job's probably safe. If you're in any role that is task-focused, your job's not safe. And that's just the reality.
I like that.
And so I think that people should take this very seriously as they think about their careers and what it means. And frankly, our generation, you've been told to study math and science and get into investment banking and consulting and do largely sort of generic knowledge work. As I think about my 4-month-old son, I'm not sure that will be the advice I give him. And so I think we will have to rethink what good careers look like. I think things like sports and performances will become a bigger part of life because I don't think we want to watch AIs playing football. I think we'd rather watch humans play it, right? So things that are more in the performance realm, I think will remain more human. But I think in everything we do in our lives, we should ask ourselves, is this something humans should still be doing or should be done by machines instead? And then build towards it.
I like that. I like that idea of how we can make lives a little simpler for people by taking off those tasks that aren't really worth our time, if you will, because like most entrepreneurs, you hire someone to do a task that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And with AI coming in, more and more people will have that ability at a cheaper and cheaper price.
Correct.
So more businesses can start.
Correct. Absolutely. And that's already happened with software, right? So it's much easier to start a software company today than 10 years ago or 20 years ago, right? So, and that will only get easier, right? And you'll be able to hire an AI accountant and AI salesperson and other sort of coordination roles that are rules-based that can be done by AI to a large percentage, and then the human can take over. And that's how we think about managers too. We think a lot of the things a manager does can be done by machines, including running one-on-ones or running cadences or running. It's essentially conversational AI. And so that can mean that the very best managers can have larger number of direct reports versus today, every manager can only have 4 to 6 direct reports because there's too much to do around each person that's entirely human done. But if 80% of that job is done by AI, you can take on 20% more of that large number of folks. And that means people will not have crappy managers because crappy managers can be replaced by AI. And the good managers can run larger teams. And that's why we say we're both a manager, co-pilot, and an autopilot, depending on what an org looks like. Because we can either enable existing managers or we can create new managers that are machines.
I'm curious because this is very interesting because you're like, we can help businesses, one, lower the managerial amount you need. So you're streamlining the business. You can hire more frontline employees, if you will, to handle the invoice instead of having more managers for it all. What issues, if you will, have you been able to solve outright for these managers? Because I know from working under managers, there's thousands of issues they have to deal with. Not just doing the one-on-ones, but also the politicking that they have to deal with. What issues have this like clearly your OnLoop has just clearly solved for these managers?
Yeah, so the first one, which we're close to fully solving, is feedback. And people have gone through, tons of feedback training. There's so much content on how to get better at feedback, but people don't get better. And that's because it's an unnatural thing to do. What people are good at is making observations. And you can take those observations, break them down into whether it's celebrate or improve feedback, rewrite it using sort of the right approaches like situation, behavior, impact, destructive feedback, and then extract skills, competencies, or behaviors from it from an unstructured observation. And then that allows managers to take their raw thoughts and actually structure it in a way that can be delivered impactfully to the direct reports. And that problem, I would say we've 90% solved already. The second problem, which we're very excited about solving, is the notion of goal alignment. And goal alignment is one of the most soul-sucking things that happen in organizations because they don't cascade through the right way. It's not clear to people what they're working on. It's hard to see what the most important things are. And people sort of go through this like vicious cycle of planning after planning. And so you can take, again, very high-level goals that a business sets, use AI to break them down, connect them to high-level goals, and then make sure you're running things at optimal clarity within orgs. So I would say we've figured out the approach. We still haven't been able to fully implement it yet, and it's in the works.
Are you using AI to figure out the solution to this problem?
Well, I think that part of it is just understanding human behavior, and I think why I feel excited about the opportunity we have as a company is that as a company, we are rooted deep in human psychology, as well as in cutting edge tech and in building good product. And to solve that problem, you sort of need to successfully do all three. And I think it is incredibly solvable with AI. And through a combination of using just algorithms plus generative matching of sort of different things happening in an org. And that will mean that people will have to spend a lot less time on alignment, a lot more time doing those projects to make sure they achieve the outcomes that the organization wants. And Atlassian, which is the parent company of a tool called Jira, actually just did some research that they produced in the State of Teams Report 2024. And they estimate that 25 billion hours are lost in the Fortune 500 because of three reasons. People not having clear goals, people not having access to information, and people spending time coordinating on achievement of those goals. And the reason they did that is because they also build products that try and solve this problem in different ways. And the reason why they invest in it now is because AI can solve it. And every CEO we speak to has these lofty goals for the business that doesn't cascade, trickle down, get tracked in a very easy manner that's frictionless, that gives them full visibility of what's going on. And that's the business critical problem we are trying to solve.
I love that. I want to kind of switch more into your more personal here, more about investing in yourself, because with everything you're doing, you know, you've worked for some huge companies like Uber, AccuCenter, and now OnLoop. How do you take the time, or what have you learned about investing in yourself to up-level yourself? Because obviously with AI, we can just go, how do I invest in myself? And it can give us this whole walkthrough. But I'm wondering, what do you do to make sure that you're on top of your game and you're constantly improving yourself?
Yeah. So look, I think a lot about fitness, and I think there's physical fitness, there's mental fitness, and then what I call social fitness. And there's better and better longevity research that shows that there are several factors that affect just how much energy you have as a person. And I think as an entrepreneur, your sort of biggest enemy is time and energy to do all the things you want to do. And so things to increase your energy or your capacity or your ability to deal with stress is sort of, I think, the best investment you can make in yourself. And for me, it's about, investing in all of those three. I'm better investing at my social fitness and mental health than I'm at my physical fitness, and that's something I'm trying to change. But I think the best investment in yourself is to make sure you're keeping yourself fit, because if you don't keep yourself fit, you will make bad decisions for yourself and your team, and you might literally die. And learning and growth and all those things just happen naturally. And we talk about sort of our collaborative team development model that talks about the things that you have to take care of to perform optimally, and that the foundation of it is how full is your battery. And then it's about having clarity on your goals, then it's about enough feedback, and then it's continuous learning and growth. But the foundation of it is energy. And I think most entrepreneurs are so focused on chasing their goals and trying to learn and grow that they forget that their battery is depleting. And literally, you can have the latest iPhone, but if the battery is dead, it can't do shit.
True.
And so keeping your own battery charged, because it is truly a marathon, I think is the best investment you can make in yourself.
I have to agree. When you're running on 10%, you're not doing the best work and you're damaging everything. I want to know, where do you see OnLoop in the next 5 to 10 years? And where do you see yourself, JJ, in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, so I define my life by 3 purpose pillars. It's the future of my family. It's the future of work and applied AI for the future of work, and the future of Singapore as a country. And sort of all of my waking time gets delineated in one of those 3 pillars. I think where I am most excited about OnLoop is our ability to help companies transform in this new world of a global hybrid workplace that is fully AI enabled and will soon have immersive VR that will further reduce the barriers that exist between people across borders. And that will mean people rethinking who they hire, people rethinking where their people work. It's rethinking how they work optimally. And I want us to be able to be a partner across that entire journey through a combination of products and software that we build, but also services we can provide. And so I think about ourselves much more as a Palantir as a company than Workday as a company, because we can truly drive transformation for companies using AI for their workforce and how they get the maximum ROI from the biggest line item on their P&L. It is shocking to me that people are the most expensive piece in most organizations, and nobody actually owns people productivity. There's no single person except the CEO that owns the productivity of the largest cost item on the P&L. And that's just crazy. And it's definitely not HR. And so that's where I am excited about OnLoop and our ability to sort of help every knowledge worker achieve their full potential in making sure they find the right role for themselves, and sort of then develop themselves the right way. For myself personally, I don't think those 3 pillars will change till I die. I think what will evolve is where I spend time across those 3 pillars. And today, sort of the middle pillar takes up 80% of my time. In the future, the 2 pillars around family and Singapore might take up more of my time. But it will largely be across those 3 pillars.
I like that. I really do. I like how you have those 3 solid pillars to focus on, and it's a simpler way of moving towards your goals, because do they align with one of these 3 pillars? If they don't, you can drop it and it's even easier. We're gonna go back. I want to ask you something about your 10-year-old self. You have your 10-year. I actually have your 10-year-old self here. He's very nice, very kind, very polite. But I'm wondering, what's a piece of advice? Like, I know you have a young child. I don't know if you have other children, but what's one piece of advice you would love to hand back to your 10-year-old self to help them with the rest of life?
Yeah. Work. and start operating in the real world as quickly as possible. And if you can, start a business, and start any business. Because I think one of the things that is very tough in terms of how both education systems and corporate systems are built is that they don't teach you demand generation. And ultimately, when you're an entrepreneur, all that you're doing is demand generation. And when you start something, or you're promoting something, or you're building something, you learn the skill of marketing yourself in a way that's authentic and attracts others. And frankly, the earlier you start that, the better. The earlier you start that, you'll get to see how your education plays a role. So you'll realize that algebra really matters, right? Organic chemistry matters less, right? So you also get to see how the things that you study actually play a role in how you might live the rest of your life. And you might start adopting skills and approaches that may not be visible in the education system. So I have a 4-month-old child, but I have a 12-year-old nephew. And I was just in India last week because my mom had surgery, so everybody had flown down. And we had a very intense lunch conversation about God. And he loved it. And he was like, this is such an amazing conversation. And those conversations are not happening at school and are important to have on how you think about the world and how you form a worldview. And so the faster people can think about the world in how it truly operates, I think the faster you get a sense of how things are, and the faster you can be successful. I think for me, I have suffered because I started my sort of business building journey at 33 and not at 10. And I wish I started at 10. And I'll make sure my son Gavin starts at 10, if not earlier. Because the earlier you start, the better.
I like that. And it's true. The sooner you start, the more successful you can see in your life when you start analyzing problems at a young age. When you get to our age, mid to late 30s, we're on a back foot because we're so stuck in our ways in some
100%.
thinking.
You learn how to ski at 3, you learn like that. Try to learn how to ski at 35, all the best. Right? So
plus we don't bounce back as quickly when we're 35.
Correct. And then the other thing that really prevents people from becoming entrepreneurs is your burn rate in life. Frankly, that is the single largest thing that comes in the way, is how do you pay for yourself? And when you're 10, your parents pay for you. So you don't have to pay for yourself. Right? And the younger you are, and the best thing you can do in your life is to keep your monthly burn low. Large salaries are a trap to keep you there because you can't get off the hamster wheel. But if you keep your monthly costs low, you can do whatever you want. And we don't teach people to do that.
No. We're teaching people how to be pegs and cogs in a big wheel that just keep you moving and burning out. JJ, I'm having a great time chatting with you, but unfortunately we are getting to the end of the episode. So I'm going to jump off stage here. I want you to let the audience know how they can connect with you. If they're a company looking to have a better impact through their feedback and management, how to connect with OnLoop. So the floor, sir, is yours.
Cool. Now, thank you for your time. I really appreciate you tuning in. LinkedIn is the best way to find me, so you can just look up my name or OnLoop and you'll get hold of me. Our website's onloop.ai or onloop.com if you want to find out more about us. And please write in. I listen to or read everything that comes in my mailbox. So I look forward to hearing from folks.
Excellent. JJ, I can't thank you enough for being here. It was a pleasure chatting with you. I love everything you're doing with OnLoop and, changing the workforce and managers to be better managers, which we all need because we've all had that one manager that we, anyways. So I want to thank you so much for being here and sharing your story with us.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Excellent. To my audience, check out the show notes down below to connect with JJ and OnLoop to see if it's a great fit for you. And as always, I want to thank you for listening, and remember to always invest in yourself.